No, it's all chicken. Okay. Okay, so today I was in downtown, and I, as usual, I forgot where I parked, as I often do. And I was looking for my parking space, and then I was thinking, everything's by divine providence, right? In fact, I forgot my parking space was also by divine providence. And I meet someone in the corner over there. Hey, Yehuda, shalom aleichem. And I say, he looks Jewish. Are you Jewish? I'm Jewish. What's your name? Gamzu Tova. Like, that's a message. Okay, Gamzu, Gamzu Tova means everything Hashem does is for good. So we used the opportunity to put on tefillin, and it was amazing, really amazing thing out of like nowhere. Like it wasn't like in the middle of like an area where there are no Jews in downtown. Anyway, so
his name is really Gamzu Tova.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, Sion Gamzu Tova. That's his real name.
Wow.
So speaking of Gamzu Tova, there are very difficult challenges that many people have when it comes to the Torah's rules about who you could marry, who you can't marry. And saying Gamzu Tova, this is also for good, isn't very easy. Rabbi Shabtai Savatitsky is Rebbe's emissary in Belgium. There was one Simchas Torah many years ago. The whole synagogue was cleared out for everyone to dance with the Torah. And one new guy shows up, and he doesn't look like he usually goes to celebrate Simchat Torah, and he's there, and he has his little kippah, those little kippahs that look like they're going to fall off any second. And he has long hair, and he's dancing the Torah. Rabbi Savatitsky goes over to him, and he says, it's Simchat Torah, it's like we're marrying the Torah. You know who the bride is easily at a wedding, because the bride is wearing a different dress, but how do you know who the chatan is? How can you tell the groom is? The groom is going to wear a suit or a kapata. How do you know who the groom is? Because many people wear a suit. Now you could tell? No, how can you tell? You don't have to answer. The way you can tell is the groom is the one who goes home with the kala at the end of the evening. That's who the groom is. So in the same way, if we're marrying the Torah and Simchat Torah, how do you know if we're really married to the Torah? It depends if we take the Torah with us out to Simchat Torah. So Rabbi Savatitsky said to him, we're celebrating with the Torah tonight, and we're going to continue to celebrate the whole year. Let's learn together. He says, okay. And he's a very brilliant guy, and they start learning together, and the relationship develops, and he's learning more about mitzvahs, he starts observing more of the Torah's commandments, and he really likes it. And after they're learning for some time, Rabbi Savatitsky, in the middle of one subject they were learning, he mentions a parenthetical point, which is that you're not allowed to marry, if you're a Kohen, you're not allowed to marry a convert. So the guy turns white. He says, what happened? He thought it was someone in his family. He said, listen, I'm a lawyer. I had this case in New York, and I went to do this case there for a while, and I met someone there. We really hit it off. And I told her that I wanted to pursue the relationship, and she said, I can't marry someone who isn't religious. And he said, that's why I came to you on Simchat Torah, because I wanted to learn about Judaism, because I wanted to marry her. And I am a Kohen, and she's a convert. She's a religious convert, so I can't marry her. What should I do? So he didn't want to hear about various, RabbiYes.com, RabbiNo.com. Maybe find a way that he's not really a Kohen. Maybe there's some kind of loophole. Maybe he thought he was a Kohen. He wasn't a Kohen. He's like, listen, I need to know that I'm doing the right thing, and I don't want to do any tricks and jokes. There's no shortcuts in life. As a lawyer, he knows he's seen a lot. So Rabbi Savatitsky suggested to him to write a letter to the Rebbe. They wrote a letter to the Rebbe. An answer came from the Rebbe. They sat down together in the Chabad house to study what the Rebbe was saying, and he reads it, and he gets up in the middle of the conversation, and he hugs, and he starts crying. He hugs Rabbi Savatitsky, and he says, I'm moving on. Now, what exactly what the Rebbe responded, I'm going to share with you in a minute, but perhaps before we do, to understand that a little more deeper, let's introduce this with a teaching from this week's Torah portion. This week's Torah portion talks about the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka, which is actually the longest marriage recorded in the Torah. Yitzchak and Rivka are married for, you know how long? Married for 120 years. The longest marriage of the patriarchs, 120 years. A friend of mine, Rabbi Shneur Ashkenazi from Rishon LeZion, he told me that he went to his father shortly before his wedding. And he said that he just doesn't know what to do because when he got engaged, he was very excited and the excitement has waned a little bit. So what should he do? So his father took out a chumash and he showed him a verse in the Torah portion. It says in the Torah, and Isaac brought Rebekah into his tent and she became his wife and he loved her. So it says first he brought her into his tent and then he loved her. Hollywood wants us to believe that love is at first sight, and sometimes perhaps there's such a thing. But then Hollywood says then it wanes. Then that's the high point. Then it goes down. But in Judaism, Torah says that's not the way it works. Marriage is something that is needs to be invested in and built so that it grows and grows and grows and grows. Marriage isn't the high point of your life. Marriage is just the first step of your relationship. So there is a teaching, this week's Torah portion of the Even Ezra. Even Ezra says that when Eliezer, the servant of Abraham, is sent to find a wife for Yitzchak, Abraham says, Hashem, who is the God of the heaven and the God of the earth, will help you find someone. So the Even Ezra says, why does Abraham mention God of the heaven and God of the earth specifically? So Rashi says what Rashi says, but the Even Ezra says something else. The Even Ezra says, a match is made in heaven. 40 days before a person is born, there's already an announcement in heaven that this woman will marry this man. The match is made in heaven, but it's on the earth. It doesn't stay in the heaven. The match, which is on the earth, is made in heaven. What does that mean? What was Even Ezra teaching us? We know this from the Talmud. What he was trying to teach us is not only is it something in the heaven, not only is this a truth that comes from the heaven, that's what the essence of marriage is on earth as well. What does that mean? It says in the Torah, whenever the Torah describes creation, any part of creation, Torah says God made male and female, or male and female. Okay, fine, that's not right. Fine. He made male and female. But when it says about man, God says he created Zachar and Nekeva Bra'am. He created man as male and female. That means the Medrash discusses what exactly happened. People think it means there were Siamese twins. But Siamese twins is not a blessing. Siamese twins is a very difficult situation. Anyone who's seen a Siamese twin, it's not an easy thing for many reasons. It's very, very complicated. It's on a very simple level. One of the twins wants to sleep. One of them wants to stay awake. One wants to go one place. Other one wants to go somewhere else. One likes it, likes to keep the light on at night. One likes to turn the light off. And it's not an easy thing. And they always have to constantly give in to the other. It's not easy at all. So to think that Adam and Eve were created as Siamese twins is not what the Torah is saying. There are halachic ramifications as well. Do Siamese twins need to wear 2 pairs of tefillin for both heads? Do Siamese twins have 2 shares in an inheritance of their father, only 1 share? So it's a challenge. And the truth is, when it says in the Torah that God created Adam and Eve as one, as male and female, doesn't mean that they were Siamese twins. There's 2 opinions in the Medrash how they were created. One opinion in the Medrash is androgynous. Androgynous means they were created with both male and female organs. That's the first opinion. The second opinion in the Medrash is they were created as 2 people, 2 faces. And usually we find arguments about what happens in the Talmud. If you look a little deeper, you discover that there's no real argument about what actually happened, because since they're both words of Hashem, it can't be the argument about actual facts. There could be arguments about what's kosher, what's not kosher, but about Metzias, what actually happened doesn't make sense. There's an argument. Therefore, whenever you see an argument about a fact, you have to look a little deeper to discover how both opinions really could be applied. And here it's the same thing. Adam and Eve were created as one organism, one being. In their feeling, there was one feeling. When your hand hurts, for example, you hurt. Just now I was playing basketball with my son and I slipped and I fell. besides the fact that he routed me very well in the court, and he's 2 heads shorter than me, and he's more than 30 years younger than me, and he still, it was embarrassing enough. Then he got me, I also fell flat on my face, Baruch Hashem. Anyways, when you hurt any part of your body, your whole body hurts. So Adam and Chava were one person. They had one feeling, that two bodies were attached by the back. So if you looked at them, you saw 2 bodies. But in their feeling, there was one person. They felt as one. There was one feeling, but you looked at 2 bodies attached from the back. So it wasn't only Adam and Chava. It wasn't only Adam and Eve. The Arizal says that within Adam and Eve, all souls were there. Every single soul that will ever be born was included in the soul of Adam and Eve. That means when God separated Adam and Eve, people think that God just took the rib out of Adam. But if you look at the word Torah carefully, the Torah says tzela. Tzela means the side. Adam and Eve were attached by the back, and God separated the side of Adam. He separated Eve from Adam, and now Eve became a separate person. So in that separation, it wasn't just a separation of those 2 people. All souls were included in Adam as one. Male and female were one soul within Adam. And then when God separated them, God separated all souls. It's called in Kabbalah the Nesira, the separation of male and female. So in that separation, the Torah says, concerning the separation, therefore the Torah says, a man should leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife. Why? According to the result, says it makes sense, because the Torah doesn't view a marriage as, some people get married because they're looking for a companion, someone who likes them and cares about them. Some people get married because they want to make their life in order, they want someone to support them. Some people get married because of financial reasons, all the kind of reasons that a person might get married. And some people feel that when the feelings die, maybe the relationship should end as well. If marriage is about feeling and the feeling isn't there anymore, so perhaps the marriage should end. But the Torah says that marriage is far deeper than feelings. Marriage is far deeper than financial concerns. Marriage, the essence of marriage is that a husband and a wife are really 2 halves of one neshama. So getting married means coming towards your true self, coming towards your inner core, coming who you are. So therefore, it doesn't matter if the feelings are there or the finances is there, because marriage isn't based upon feelings or finances. It's something, it's you're coming to your core. And this is what the Rebbe told Rabbi Savatitsky and this gentleman. The Rebbe said to him, since the Torah says that 40 days before you're born, God already announces who you're going to marry, it comes out that if God wanted you to marry this person, which means that this is really your soulmate, this is your true essence, then either God would have caused you to be born as a non-Kohen, or God would have caused her to be born as a Jewess, not as a convert. The fact that God chose you to be born as a Kohen and her to be born as a convert, and not to be Jewish and to convert later, that indicates that this isn't your core, this isn't who you are. The guy listened, and it wasn't easy, but he left her, and he, Baruch Hashem, found someone else, and thank God he is blessed with children and grandchildren, amazing family. The idea of being one neshama, one soul, has halachic ramifications as well. Let's say Ruvain, happens often in the synagogue that unfortunately that there is a discord, there's an argument, and let's say Ruvain hurts Shimon. Shimon was supposed to be the chazan that day, and he wasn't the chazan. So Ruvain goes over, and Shimon is so upset that Ruvain chose to be the chazan, and Shimon gives him what for. And what does the Torah say? That Shimon, who hurt Ruvain, is obligated to pay him 5 kinds of payments. He has to pay him for, let's say he broke his nose. He has to pay him the payment for the cost of the broken nose. He has to pay him for the doctor bills. He has to pay him for the time he lost from work. And he also has to pay him for embarrassing it. Now, if your nose is broken, it's not just embarrassing for you, it's also embarrassing for your family. Your son is embarrassed. Hey, I saw your dad with a broken nose. What happened to the other guy? Who was he started up with? What happened? So do you have to pay for the embarrassment of the guy's son also? So Torah says no. But what about his wife? Yes. You're obligated to pay for embarrassing his wife. Why? Because a husband and wife are one. Hanukkah is coming up another month. This Shabbos blesses the month of Kislev. The Torah says everyone should have their own menorah, except for a husband and wife. Husband and wife have one menorah. The one menorah is because they're one entity, one cell. That's why the Torah says you can't sell a Torah. There's only two reasons you could sell a Torah. You never should sell a Torah. You're allowed to sell a Torah for the sake of the study of Torah. Torah needs to preserve itself. So you have an actual Torah scroll, which is worth a considerable amount of money, and you need to keep your school running, you could sell the Torah. Or for marriage. Why is marriage considered so important that you're able to sell? Because what is marriage? Marriage is bringing God's oneness, God's unity, God's truth into the world. In the union of husband and wife, and they're becoming one, there's an expression of God's oneness. This is also the reason the Mittler Rebbe says why God separated Adam and Eve. Think about it. Adam and Eve had it going pretty well. Adam, I want to wash the dishes right now. I'm sorry. I want to watch the news. I'm not washing the dishes. I had a long Shabbos. I was by Moshe Bezalel's Kiddush and I ate too much and I'm tired. I'm not washing any dishes. We're going to wash the dishes. And if as they were created, they're one being, there's no arguments. What are they missing? They're one. There's purity. There's oneness. There's togetherness. What are they missing? So Mittler Rebbe says, fascinating. Mittler Rebbe says there's one organ that they don't have. One organ they don't have. What organ don't they have? Unbelievable. They don't have a back. A back. Who needs a back? What's so good about a back? A back is a negative thing. We know in the synagogue, you're not supposed to turn your back to the Torah. You're not supposed to turn your back to the Ark. Two people are angry at each other. You don't know if they're angry at each other if they choose to sit at two ends of the room. But if they're sitting next to each other, one turns his back to the other, then you know they're upset at each other. A back is a negative thing. A face is expression of yourself and your feelings, and your back is you turn away. You don't want to show. You don't want to share. But in order to be able to, for the husband and wife to look at each other and to see each other's sparkling eyes, they have to be separated. There has to be a back there too. In order for the sun to rise, for that to be appreciated, the sun has to set. So in a similar way, the Torah makes a husband and wife to be separated in order for there to be a deep bond between each other. Think about your own arm. You ever see anybody to hold on to their arm? Say, I love you, my arm. My dear arm, you're so wonderful. And kiss their arm. Why? Because it's you. So there's no yearning. There's no love. There's no thirst. When there's two, but for your children, there's yearning, there's love, there's feeling. Why? Because they may come from you, but they're separate. Same is also with husband and wife. But in order for there to be a shuv, there has to be ratzah. In order for there to be a yearning, there has to be this separation. So in order, a husband and wife, in our tradition, a husband and wife aren't meant to show affection to each other in public, but when a husband and wife, very often children can notice when their parents look at each other in their eyes and then they get each other, understand each other. It creates a whole world for the child. It puts a child on. It helps the child stand on his feet, seeing the bond of his father and mother have with each other, just in their eyes. So that's why God created a back, so they should be able to look at each other in their eyes. That's why God created backs. That's why God separated Adam and Eve. There was this guy who went to a doctor, and the doctor said to him, I need you to come for a procedure at 9:30 Friday morning. He says, I'm sorry, I have a meeting at 9:30 Friday morning. I can't come. Doctor says, listen, it's really important. You can't miss this. He says, yeah, but I have a meeting. So who are you meeting with? You're meeting with Trump, meeting with Biden? Who is meeting with? He said, I'm meeting my wife. Okay. And you can't meet her any other time? Well, you see, she's in an old age home, and I meet her every Friday at 9:30. So how's she doing? Well, she doesn't really talk anymore. She can't really walk anymore. 1 second. Can she recognize you? No, she doesn't recognize me. So you're going there? She doesn't recognize me. I recognize her. I sit with her. I hold her hand. And I enjoy just looking at her eyes, just looking at her. In other words, the connection isn't because he feels he can give to her either. There's a connection there that's beyond a feeling of giving or even receiving. It's just they're one entity. They are one of one essence. This also helps us understand something about arguments in marriage. A lot of couples, the Rebbe writes that in the first year of marriage, there are a lot of arguments. In one letter, the Rebbe writes, in the first year of marriage, there are less arguments. And it seems like to me that there's not a contradiction. Rabbi says because the excitement of marriage, so therefore you get along with each other better, you're able to give in the arguments. But getting used to each other, the first year there's more friction, but together with the more friction, there's also more excitement, so you're able to handle the friction a little better. Don't make any friction. And anyways, moving right along. So very often a couple has friction, or God forbid, and what happens is the couple feels that the friction, the bump in the road is a brick wall. But understanding that you're two halves of one neshama gives a deeper understanding of all the friction. How so? What do you do when you have a headache? When you have a headache, what do you do when you have a headache? You have a headache, you take aspirin. So what do you do when your wife has a headache? When she doesn't feel good? This guy walks into this home in Israel, into the living room, and he sees this big portrait on the wall, covering half the living room wall. The letter is our Aleph, Bet, Lamed. He's like, Aval. Aval means but. So what is this? He says, listen, my wife and I didn't always get along so well. I went to a rabbi. The rabbi says, I need kapara. I need to have some kind of an atonement. Sometimes the arguments happen. It's not because of something I did wrong necessarily, but just because I need to be cleansed, and therefore I experience some difficulty. So I remember whenever we get in an argument, Aval anachnu chatan. I remember the words of our prayers, but we have sinned. Okay? Hey, but there's a dot after the aleph, there's a dot after the bet, there's a dot after the lamed. What does that mean? It's also an acronym. Aleph, bet, lamed is an acronym. What is the acronym? Ani b'sinar lavan. I have to wear a white apron. When I come home and I see that my wife isn't in the best of moods, so instead of saying, well, she is not in a good mood, I say, if something going on and how she feels, there must be something that I could do as well because we are one. So her negative feeling, I have to think about her and think, what's going on? How does she feel? Why is she bothered? And trying to make things better because ani b'sinar lavan. I'm here to serve. It's a joke you may have heard before, but I think it's something that we all need to hear every so often. This guy comes to a Kabbalist. And he says, I need you to give my wife a curse. I can't stand living with her. I want her to die. Can you help me? So the Kabbalist says, listen, I'm looking on you light some candles, and he says, you know what? We could do this, but this is what's going to take. She's destined to have 30 days of enjoyment of life in her lifetime. If you can give her all 30 days in a row, then by the 31st night, she'll go to sleep. She won't wake up the next morning. Okay, I can do that. He calls up his boss. He says, boss, I can't finish work at 5:30 anymore. I have to finish at 5 o'clock. My wife wants to come home. Okay, fine. He arranges something. He comes home at 5 o'clock. She comes home at 5:30. Before she comes home, he runs around. He washes the dishes. He cleans this. He cleans that. She comes home. So the first day, what does she think? Yishtageya. He's going crazy. The second day, he comes home early and he already cleaned up the harder parts. Now he's dusting things and cleaning things. He must be depressed. The third day, she comes home. He already made dinner for her. And she started to think, maybe this is actually real. And she started to reciprocate. She asked her boss to go home early from work, and she brought him a present, and he brought her a present, and started giving to each other. And when the first night came, the Kabbalist called him up, and the Kabbalist says, okay, tonight we're going to apply the curse. He says, chas v'shalom, don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. The blessing, God willing, next week by your wedding, one of the blessings we give the chatan and the kala, we say, Asher bara sason v'simcha chatan v'kala gilari and ditz v'chedva. We first mention chatan v'kala, and then we talk about love. People look at love as the highest value. You need to get to love. It's not the highest. Love is something which facilitates the highest value. The highest value is chatan and kala. It's not, as Rabbi Moshe Levin often says, love is an idol worship. It's not about love only. In fact, the Torah says first there's chatan v'kala. That's the erech elyon. That's the ideal. And because of this ideal, God caused there to be a charm that a husband finds in his wife and a wife finds in a husband. That charm was created in order to make this deep bond between chatan and kala. But chatan and kala, the two halves of one neshama. That's the ideal that we need to work for. There are some people that think that that really in marriage we're two different people. We have nothing to do with each other, but our connection is the love. And love stops, you have to stop. But that's not that. It's deeper than that. Because there's a connection, therefore there's love. There was a guy who got engaged right before the Holocaust. Unfortunately, he went through 5 concentration camps. He survived, but he was really battered. He became a cripple, and he became hunchbacked. And his wife was able to stay by a non-Jewish family, and she was fine. After the war is over, he goes back to Poland. He's walking in the street in Poland, and he sees his Kala. He's a little embarrassed to walk over to her. He's hunchbacked, he's thin, he's bloated. He doesn't want to walk over, and he starts following her. He's following her, she's walking, he's following her. She doesn't know he's following her, he's following her. And finally, she comes to a storefront, there's a window, and she looks in the window, and she sees someone who looks like her, like the Chatan. And he gathers some courage, he walks over to her, and he says to her, I know that you're going to want to marry someone else right now, and I forgive you. I totally understand it. I totally get it. I'm not the guy that you married, that you wanted to marry. I'm somebody else. I became different. I just wanted to tell you that I'm very happy to see you, and I wish you a happy, wonderful life. He starts to walk away. Just, what are you doing? This is the happiest moment of my life to see that you survived. I was worried about you the whole time. They got married. The Stanze Rebbe, the Divrei Chaim, he was a cripple. And in those days, when people got married, they didn't go out on many, many dates. They went on maybe one date. So he was engaged to get married to a woman named Rachel Fega Tam. Rachel Fega was a daughter of a great tzaddik named Rabbi Tam. And before they got married, on the right before the wedding, she came with her father. He came with his whole family, whole entourage, to celebrate the wedding. But right when the Kala noticed who had arrived in town, and she saw how her Chatan is limping, she knows he's a cripple, because when they only met one time, she didn't notice. When she noticed he's a cripple, she told her father, I'm never going to marry this guy. I know he's crippled. So the Tzanzer Rebbe said, I need a few minutes with Rachel Fega. Just let me speak to her for a few minutes. The father of the bride says, it's not going to help. She wasn't interested. He was very wealthy. He said, I'll give you any money that you want. Just, I'm sorry. I know it's embarrassing. You came for the wedding and there's no wedding, but it's not going to work. Just please, let me have a few minutes with her. He goes to speak to her. And the Tzanzer Rebbe, is a tzaddik. And he says to the Kala, I want to show you this mirror. They go together in front of the mirror. And in the mirror, she sees that she's crippled. She turns away. What is this? She tells her, in heaven, we're 2 halves of one neshama. And it was decreed upon you to be the cripple. But I prayed to God, look, God, she is so beautiful. She's so intelligent. And she has so much going for her. This is really going to hamper her success in life. Let me be the cripple. And God accepted my prayer, and he let me be the cripple instead of her. So in a moment of sensitivity, and she was a very wise, sensitive person, she realized this is the guy. This is her husband. They got married, and Tzanzer Rebbe. So the point is that in marriage, people look for shleimut. Shleimut means perfection. But the word shleimut also comes from the word lahashlim. Lahashlim means to make peace with whatever is going on. There was a great tzaddik. His name was the Chozeh Lublin. Someone had a difficulty with his peace at home, and he asked the Chozeh Lublin for advice. The Chozeh Lublin, I'll tell you guys the story, and I'll let you guys go. He goes to Chozeh Lublin, and he says to him, I'm not getting along with my wife. Can you give me some advice? The Chozeh Lublin says, here's my advice. I want you to go to the dock and see how people tie their lumber, send upstream, and you'll see this guy Yitzchak Chaim over there. Yitzchak Chaim, the way he ties his lumber, then you'll know how to handle marriage. Okay, he goes to the dock. How does it work? Everyone takes these branches and they plane them, make them smooth, and then they attach and they tie them with ropes. Yitzchak Chaim doesn't do that. Yitzchak Chaim, every branch has some protrusions in it. It's not the perfect straight thing. Yitzchak Chaim, instead of flattening out the branch, he makes holes in the neighboring branch so that the protrusions have a place to fit. And they asked Yitzchak Chaim, why are you doing it that way? He says it fits better that way. Fits better that way. In other words, the connection between Chatan and Kala is created by by making space in yourself for the other person. It's not by it's by opening up in yourself and accepting the other person for the way they are. Instead of trying to change them, making a space in you to handle what other person is. You remember I told you Mendel put the fast in the ring, right? No, you don't remember?
I never heard of that.
Never heard it? Rabbi Savatitsky, I mentioned before he got married, he went to Mendel Futterfast to ask for advice for his marriage. Mendel Futterfast said, "You have a ring?" He said, "Yeah, can I see the ring?" He looks at the ring. Mendel Futterfast says, "Do you see it?" He says, "Yeah." Do you see it? Do you see it? He says, "What?" He says, "What do I see?" He says, "It's a ring." He says, "No, don't you see?" He said, What? It's round? It's gold?" Remember, you're missing the main thing. The main thing is there's a hole. In marriage, what connects the husband and wife is that the husband and wife make a space for each in themselves for the other to accept them the way they are instead of trying to change them. Avraham married Sarah. Avraham was different than Sarah. Avraham was chesed. What was Sarah? Sarah was gevura. That's why it's Sarah in American. Yitzchak was gevura. That's why he wanted to marry someone who was kind. He wanted to marry someone who was kind because he needed kind, because he was gevura. In a similar way, every chatan and kala, they give to each other to make perfection in yourself. You need to let the other person in to complement where you're lacking. So bottom line is that this coming Shabbos, we're reading about the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka, and it's not just the marriage of Yitzchak and Rivka, it also represents the marriage of Hashem with Jewish people. And this is a time of the Geula, and it's a time also when all the shluchim, all the Chabad emissaries internationally are gathering the Shabbos virtually, soul way, in a greater, broader way than ever before, because now no one can say I'm not coming. So it's a really special time to connect with our individual divine mission and connect with the Kadosh Baruch Hu until we should see the coming Mashiach, B'karam Mamish, when we'll see the main chasana in the Simchas Torah of Hashem, the Jewish people. L'chaim, l'chaim.
Yeah. Welcome. Libby wishes you a good Shabbos.
And any questions, comments, criticism?
Can I say something?
Go ahead.
שרה, after השם לקח את העצם ולמעשה הוא לא לקח, הוא הפריד ביניהם, העוד